A woman drowned herself in a river to save a baby. That baby grew up in a village at the base of a waterfall, never knowing his name, never knowing his blood, never knowing why he could not stop climbing towards something he could not see. The answer was on the other side of that mountain the whole time. The village at the base of the waterfall had no idea where the boy had come from. A woman named Sangha had pulled him from the river when he was barely old enough to survive it, and she had raised him as her own. She named him Shiva. She watched him grow into something that defied ordinary explanation, a young man who could carry stone idols uphill for sport, who dove into the base of waterfalls as though the force of the water was an invitation rather than a warning, who tried again and again and again to reach the top of the mountain that loomed above their village. She was not afraid of the mountain itself, she was afraid of what was on the other side of it. She knew where he came from. She could never tell him. Shiva has not succeeded yet, but the word yet is doing a lot of work in that sentence, because anyone who has watched him make the attempt understands that this is not a young man who stops. His mother Sangha watches him with a particular kind of dread that she has never fully explained to him. She performs rituals at the base of the waterfall. She prays for the climb to stop working on him the way it does. She tells him stories about the dangers above. None of it lands. She knows something she has never told him. She pulled him from the river when he was days old. She watched the woman who carried him go under the water and not come back up. She has known his entire life that he belongs to a story much larger than this village, and she has spent 25 years doing everything in her power to keep that story from finding him. The story finds him anyway. It finds him in the shape of a wooden mask. It comes from above, from the top of the waterfall, from the other side of the mountain, from somewhere he has never been. He picks it up from the ground. He presses it into the sand. He traces the outline of a face that becomes a woman, and he does not understand why his hands know exactly what they are drawing, but they do. He climbs. This time he does not stop. What he finds at the top is not what he expected. There is a young woman named Avantika who is moving fast and trying not to be seen, and she is not from anywhere near here. She is a warrior attached to a resistance that has been fighting a quiet, losing battle against the kingdom of Mahishmati for longer than she has been alive. Her mission is specific and nearly impossible. She has been sent to infiltrate Mahishmati, locate a prisoner who has been held in chains for 25 years, and bring her out alive. The prisoner's name is Devasena. She is a queen, and she is still alive not because her captors have shown her mercy, but because she has refused every single morning for 25 years to behave like a woman who has given up. Mahishmati is not a small problem to walk into. It is one of the most powerful kingdoms in the region, and its current king, Balaladeva, has built his reign on a very simple and very effective principle: make the cost of opposition so visible and so permanent that nobody considers it worth attempting. Devasena in chains in his open courtyard is not an oversight. She is a message. Every person who passes through that space sees her and understands what the message is. Shiva listens to all of this and volunteers to go in himself. Avantika has no particular reason to trust a stranger who climbed a waterfall to find her. But there is something about him that is difficult to argue with, not just the strength, which is extraordinary, but the certainty. He does not speak like a man making a calculation. He speaks like a man who has already decided. He goes. Mahishmati is everything its reputation promised, and Shiva walks into it with nothing but his instincts and a willingness to improvise. He finds his way into the labor corps, the men tasked with hauling a massive golden statue of the king through the streets as part of a public ceremony. The statue is enormous, and the men assigned to the ropes are already exhausted before the procession begins. When the weight becomes too much and the statue begins to tilt toward the crowd, Shiva steps forward and holds it. Not strains, holds. The crowd watches a single man do what dozens could not manage, and the silence that follows has a very specific quality to it. Then one of the workers says a name under his breath. The name travels through the crowd the way fire travels through dry grass. Not loud, not announced, just suddenly everywhere at once. People who have not said this name in years are saying it now, and the emotion attached to it is not the controlled reverence you show for current power. It is the raw, involuntary grief you feel for something you loved and lost and were not allowed to mourn. The name is Bahu. Balaladeva hears it from his position at the front of the procession, and his face does something that tells Shiva everything he needs to know about what that name means to the man on the throne. Not confusion, not curiosity, something colder than either of those things. Shiva moves before they can close around him. He fights through the soldiers sent to contain him, reaches the courtyard where Devasena is held, and for one moment the two of them are in the same space. Devasena turns toward him, and she does not look like a woman seeing a stranger. She looks like a woman whose certainty has just been confirmed. She has known he was coming. She has known for 25 years. But the trap is faster than the moment. They are both caught before he can get her out. And then Katapa arrives, the kingdom's most legendary warrior, enslaved to Mahishmati's throne by an oath that predates his own birth, and he does the last thing Shiva is expecting. He looks at Shiva's face, and then he drops to his knees. The man who has fought battles for decades, who has never bent to anything except the command of the throne he serves, presses his forehead to the ground in front of a young man who does not know his own name. The crowd around them follows, one by one, and then all at once. And in the silence that settles over the courtyard, Shiva understands that whatever he thought this mission was, it was never just about rescuing a stranger. That night, Katapa tells him the truth, all of it, from the beginning. The kingdom of Mahishmati had two young men at its center for most of its recent history. One of them was Balaladeva, son of Bijaladeva, who had been denied the throne due to a physical disability and had watched his wife Sivagami take administrative control of the kingdom in the resulting vacuum. The other was Bahu, an orphan of royal blood whom Sivagami raised alongside her own son as an equal, because she believed that was what the kingdom required of her. She raised them with the same teachers, the same training, the same opportunities. They became very different people. Balaladeva was effective. He understood strategy, he understood leverage, and he understood that sentiment was a liability in a kingdom that needed to project strength. He was not without honor, but his honor had limits, and those limits revealed themselves whenever his ambitions came under pressure. Bahu was something harder to categorize. He was physically among the strongest men anyone in Mahishmati had ever seen, but what made him different was not the strength. It was the fact that he seemed genuinely incapable of looking at a person in front of him and not responding to what that person actually needed. He carried injured animals off battlefields. He argued with priests on behalf of servants who had no standing to argue for themselves. Before a major military engagement, he refused to allow a ceremonial animal sacrifice because the animal was innocent and the gods, in his view, were not interested in that kind of offering. This was not performed virtue. It was simply how he was built. Sivagami watched both of them for years, and the watching was not easy. She had a son she loved and a ward who kept showing her something that made her love complicated. She was a practical woman who had built a kingdom through discipline and sacrifice, and what Bahu kept showing her was a kind of wisdom that practical women are sometimes the last to recognize, because it does not look like anything they learn to value. The battle against the Kalikeya kingdom forced the question. The Kalikeya were not a conventional enemy. Their chief had promised, if he survived the engagement, to return with a larger army every year until Mahishmati was rubble. The arrangement was that whoever killed the chief would prove fitness for the throne. It was that simple, and it was that high stakes, and everyone on the field understood both things perfectly. Balaladeva went into that battle with superior weapons and a tactical ruthlessness that was genuinely impressive. He was willing to burn through his own people if the math justified it. He killed enemies efficiently and in large numbers. Bahu went in differently. He identified that the enemy was using captured civilians as a forward shield. It is a tactic designed to force Mahishmati's army into the choice between advancing and protecting its own people. Bahu found a solution that neutralized the tactic without touching the civilians. Then he reached the Kalikeya chief and defeated him through a combination of raw power and improvisational intelligence that nobody watching had seen before. Then, with the chief in his grip, Balaladeva appeared behind him and struck the killing blow. He did it in front of the entire assembled army. He did it in front of Sivagami. He let every person present draw the conclusion he intended them to draw, and then he turned to face his mother with the expression of a man who believed he had finally settled something. Sivagami named him commander of the armed forces. She named Bahu king. Balaladeva's face in that moment contained an entire philosophy. The philosophy of a man who had spent his life believing that the world was a competition with fixed rules and had just discovered that the person setting the rules had been watching a completely different contest. He did not accept the result. He began, immediately and patiently, to dismantle it. What he used was Devasena. Bahu had fallen in love with her, who was brilliant and sharp and constitutionally incapable of performing submission for people who had not earned her respect. At a gathering of the court, Bijaladeva attempted to publicly humiliate her, and she responded with a precision that left the room in silence. Sivagami, already primed by Balaladeva's careful work, interpreted the moment as Devasena disrespecting Mahishmati rather than defending her own dignity. That misreading cost everything. Sivagami issued an order. Katapa was sworn to the throne. The throne's word was the only law he had ever known. He found Bahu, the man he had trained, the man he had watched become the finest king this kingdom had ever seen or would ever see. the man he believed in more completely than he had ever believed in anything, and he drove a blade into his back. Bahu looked up at him with confusion on his face, rather than anger, and that expression was the thing Katapa had carried inside him, without a single day's relief, for 25 years. He served the man who had ordered it. He watched Devasena dragged to the courtyard in chains. He watched the kingdom become something Bahu would not have recognized, and he said nothing, because the oath his ancestors had taken left him no language for refusal. When he finished speaking, Shiva sat with the silence for a long time. He was not the young man from the waterfall village anymore. He understood that now, not as a loss but as a clarification. The climbing that had occupied his entire life, the reaching towards something above him that he could feel but never name, had never been random. It had always been pointed at this. His mother had known he was coming. She had gathered firewood every morning in chains, branch by branch, building a funeral pyre for a king who was still sitting on the throne. Not because she had lost her mind, because 25 years of waiting had not touched the one thing she refused to give up. She had been right. The kingdom of Mahishmati was still standing. Balaladeva was still on the throne. Every wall, every soldier, every instrument of power that had crushed Bahu in the dirt was still fully operational. Nothing had been resolved yet, and Shiva understood with complete clarity that what was coming would not be simple, or clean, or quick. But a woman had held a baby above a river and made a deal, and the deal had held. The child had lived. He had grown up at the base of a waterfall, trying again and again to reach the top of a mountain he did not understand, and the mountain had waited for him, because it had always known his father's name. He knew it now too, and that is how a young man who spent his whole life reaching for something just beyond him finally understood that he was not climbing toward a destination, he was climbing back to one.